Welcome back to another episode of The Burden of Proof. I'm your host, Tyler Lewis, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Peter Crawford. How are we doing, Peter?
Good, Tyler. How are you?
Good, good. So what do we got on tap for today?
Today we got one of the leaders in the criminal department, Angel, who is going to be talking to us about assaults, different types of assaults, what's the consequences of an assault in Maryland, and just everything about an assault.
Awesome. So Angel Campbell, she's the criminal department manager. What kind of stuff have you been dealing with at the firm?
Well, definitely assaults. We get into assaults pretty regularly here. Our practice covers all different areas of criminal law. Assault's one of my favorites, but of course we've had a couple murder cases, a lot of child pornography and sexual offense type cases, DUI. So we run the gambit, from very, very, very serious to everyday type things that we have to deal with, like assaults.
So what's a serious assault versus a non-serious assault?
Yeah, so in Maryland, and in most jurisdictions, assault is kind of broken down into levels. So here in Maryland, we have two. There's the first degree assault, which is the more serious assault. It definitely carries more time. It usually involves more serious situations. And then we have the misdemeanor second degree assault, which is probably what we've seen most of the time.
So when you say first degree, if I touch Tyler, is that a first degree or second degree?
That's a second degree.
Second degree. Okay.
Yeah,
if I punch Tyler, is that a first degree or second degree?
That's still going to be second degree. So the statute actually breaks down and differentiates between the two. So a second degree assault, the statute just says if you make any offensive contact, right? If I poke you right now and you didn't give me permission to do that, I have assaulted you. If you punch Tyler in the face, you've assaulted him, right? Because that's offensive contact. The big difference when it comes to assault in the first degree is whether there was strangulation. So if you choke somebody, if they've lost their breathing, if they can't breathe, they've lost their airways, then strangulation is a big one. We also look at the severity of any injuries, and that'll determine if it's first degree. And then obviously the one I think most people know is if you use a weapon. If you got a gun, if you got a knife, if you got some kind of weapon, then that's going to be considered a first degree assault.
So back to the injury part, is it just so if they show up with bruising and stuff, that will kind of go into?
It can. So assault one is really looking at like what was your intent? Was it your intent to cause severe injuries, right? And that's really hard to tell. And that's why if that's the only indicator that your case is, in the assault one category, then probably it's more appropriate to be in the second degree category. We're really looking for first degree strangulation, gun, knife, some type of weapon. That's really what we're looking for.
And what type of situations do you typically see with these assault cases? Is it domestic violence? Is it just like
bar fights?
Yeah, bar fights.
What do you kind of see commonly?
A little bit of both, quite honestly. So yeah, you definitely got your bar fight situation. There's something called mutual fray, which is pretty much everybody's going crazy, right? Everybody's assaulting everybody.
So there's there's a difference if there's like a big group of people that are injuring. How do they kind of try that? Is it an individual person?
Right, so each person's going to be charged usually, and each person's got to fight their own individual cases. Do you have any defenses? Does that person have any defenses? What happened here? Everybody has assaulted everybody. So
let me give you this hypothetical. Say I'm at a bar with a buddy. All right, somebody else is at a bar with a buddy.
Okay.
And that buddy and that guy say we're gonna fight each other.
Okay.
It's a mutual consent. Is that still technically assault?
No.
No?
I mean, so the assault requirements are that you make contact with another person and then that person didn't give you consent to do that. So, for example, that's why when you go to a hockey game or something like that, a football game, a basketball game, where you're making contact with people, you've actually consented to doing that. So when you play hockey and you get in those fights, they've agreed that's the nature of the game. So that's not going to be considered a criminal offense.
So when Lewis used to light people up in the field, even though they got hurt afterwards, it's not because, it wasn't outside the scope, so there was no assault.
It wasn't criminal.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
Cool. So let's dive into, I know battery gets thrown around with assault as well.
Yeah.
Kind of dive into those two things and how they kind of relate to each other.
So that actually comes from like common law,
okay.
Right? At common law, there was a distinction between battery and assault. Battery dealt with what we've been talking about, if you actually make contact with somebody. Where assault really dealt with, did you instill fear? Did you intend to instill fear? So say, for example, I walk in here and I point a gun at both of you. I didn't actually touch you, right? But I still assaulted you because my intent was to instill fear into you by having my gun.
So you don't even have to make any sort of contact?
Not for assault. At common law, you didn't. So now most jurisdictions kind of just put them together. Like, what was your intent? Was your intent to instill fear, or what did you actually touch this person? And depending on, you know, which one the state is going on, that's the one that they'll have to prove.
So they're kind of treating them essentially like the same?
Yeah, it's the same statute. Assault 2 misdemeanor, 10 years in jail and or $2,500 fine. It doesn't matter if I touched you or if I, you know, threatened to touch you.
So that
Assault 1, 25 years. You can get a bunch of time on assault 1 because it's a felony.
Gotcha. Yeah, so let's dive into the sentencing a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of. So you already touched on the second degree assault, and that's the lesser of the two. And first degree, is that 25 set, or is it kind of, you can get a range of?
So with any criminal sentence, and this, like I said, it goes across jurisdictions. When you go into court and you're actually found guilty of something, or maybe you plead guilty, you don't necessarily get 25 years. The way that the statutes are written, it explains that these are what the maximum penalties are. So there's something called sentencing guidelines, and that's essentially where the state and the judge and we get to present to the judge all these different things about you. Like, do you have any criminal history? Do you have a job? Are you a contributing member of society? Several things, like what led to this? Was alcohol involved? Like, did you get some terrible news? You know, so I've had clients who saw their wife sleeping with somebody, or there's cheating going on. So those things are going to be considered in mitigation.
Gotcha.
And then based on that, the guidelines will kind of say what range of a sentence you should get. There's also probations before judgment for people who really don't have any significant criminal history and who haven't, you know, the facts don't lend themselves to this is somebody that should necessarily go to jail. They'll be eligible to just serve out some sort of probation and keep their record clean if they came into the picture with
So
that.
PBJ is an option for some
Yeah,
of these,
PBJ,
depending on the situation.
It can be, not peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
But PBJ stands for probation before judgment. In Tennessee, where I'm from, where I practice a little bit, we had something called diversion, which was the same thing. But essentially, we're going to place you on probation. We're not going to put this on your record. We'll put you on probation. You show us that you can do whatever conditions we give you. And if you successfully complete that, when this is over, you're still going to have no record. So assault in the second degree, yeah, we have been successful in getting a lot of people those PBJs. Not so much. Assault 1 is a little bit different because the more serious nature of it, right? So usually your guidelines, even if your first offense don't have any history or anything, for most people those guidelines are from 3 to 7 years. So you want to make sure that you get an attorney in those situations and make sure that you know are evaluating the case, because it's a big jump from the first degree to the second degree.
Which makes a lot of sense. So it's not just a criminal action, but it's also a civil action, right?
That's right.
So from the civil side of things, can you speak to what's really important in that case versus the criminal case?
Yeah, so criminal, everything's about jail. Hey, you don't want to stay out of jail, you don't want to get any fines. And criminal is all about your liberty. Whereas civil, a lot of time is about money. So in a civil case, it's very similar standards. Like, did you assault someone by touching them, or what happened? But the repercussions are different between a civil case and a criminal case.
So that's going to really matter with damages, right?
Correct.
So if somebody has medical bills, or
Absolutely.
if they have punched in the face,
Yeah.
that's where the damages come into play.
And in the criminal case, there's a mechanism to where if you receive medical bills and things, there's something called restitution where you can still get that through the criminal case. So if there's a criminal aspect of it, usually it's all kind of wrapped up in there. But you're right, the civil case is primarily focused on the money of it all. What are the damages? You know, what the end result is going to be about money.
And I imagine most of those assault cases have some sort of damages and money.
It just depends. I mean,
I guess
you
the
know,
severity of it, right?
You guys been around the block, right? and so there are some situations that there's a lot of implicit biases that go on when it comes to assault. Like, for example, women are usually seen as the victim, right? And implicitly, not necessarily that may be true or not, but if the police come to a situation and there's a man and a woman, they're probably going to think, oh, okay, this is, this frail woman is
Right.
the one who's the victim here, where that's not always the case. And so those sorts of biases are going to play a role in civil or criminal.
Do you see a lot of that where a woman is necessarily assaulting the partner?
Yeah,
or something?
yeah,
I can
quite a
imagine.
bit. Quite a
Yeah,
bit.
because
There's-
I mean, it just happens. I mean, you're stuck under the roof with one person for a while. I mean, tempers flare. You never know.
Yeah, during COVID, we had quite a bit of assault.
Really did jump up during COVID.
Yeah.
People were stuck inside and just kept bickering.
Assaults and divorces.
A lot
But it's died down a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Divorces are definitely up too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the flip side of this, it's really commingled with so many different areas of law because you have the assault, you have the criminal side, you have the civil side, and then you also have protective orders that get put in place as well. And we've talked about protective orders
Yeah.
before, but I mean, it just so many different areas of law that can commingle like that.
Absolutely.
So like the assault would happen, and then that might, in case, follow with a protective order to kind of
Yeah.
stop it from happening again.
Yeah, so with the criminal side, it's the state prosecuting. With the protective order, it's just, again, the civil side of things, but it's two citizens against each other. And one's asking protection by the state or from the state against that other person, where the state, in the criminal side, is trying to take away, like you said, the liberty of that person.
Right. Yeah. Protective order is more of an immediate resolution, like get this person away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas criminal, you got to go through the justice process, and it could be a little bit slower.
Yeah, that makes sense. But would you say that a large number of these assaults are alcohol induced?
There's quite a bit of alcohol involved, and then sometimes people just don't know, how to handle their anger.
So how does that factor in with the court and the judges? Like, will they take into account that they were under the influence of alcohol?
Absolutely, yeah. So if alcohol is really the issue, there's different aims of criminal justice, like rehabilitation is part of it, and obviously punishment is part of it. And so if your issue is really alcohol, then the judge is going to take that into consideration when determining like what should happen to you.
And it's usually like we have resources of places you can go for the different treatments.
Absolutely,
and all
yeah.
that.
We've got a really good relationship with several different facilities, and we can usually get our clients to where they need to go.
Awesome.
It's
Cool.
better to do that sooner than later because you're right, they take alcohol into consideration, but after the seventh time of it happening on
Exactly,
alcohol, at that point it's like,
exactly.
okay, you put yourself in this position several
Yeah,
times.
yeah. Judges are people,
Mhm.
right? And when they sit and they evaluate a situation, you can only say so many times that I've got an alcohol problem or a drug problem, without actually addressing it.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure that you're actually addressing whatever those issues
Do
are.
you see a decent amount of like repeat assault offenders, or is it just kind
Assault-
of a one-off? Because I mean, I could see that flip side where if you don't address it,
Yeah.
then you just kind of get in the habit, and it's a snowball effect.
Right. Assaults, in my opinion, are really case by case. One of my favorite cases, we had a jury trial in Carroll County.
Oh, wow.
And my client's a younger guy. He's like in his 30s or something. I don't know if that's still young or not. But he's like in his 30s, maybe 40s, something like that. And the alleged victim in the case was actually like a 70-year-old man. And so my client was found not guilty in that case because even though, like I said, those implicit biases definitely play a role, this old man, right, got beat up a little bit,
Mhm.
right? But that's really a one-off situation. That's really a one-off situation where he was defending himself. And we do see a lot of, there are defenses to assault, right? There are times when it's justified to, put your hands on somebody, and defending yourself if that harm is threatened to you is definitely one of those times. So those, in my opinion, are a little bit more like one-off.
Mhm.
The alcohol issues, I wouldn't say that they're, at least in my experience, they're not extremely, recurring.
Right.
A lot of the times, the clients we are able to come in contact with, we can really get them into the treatment that they need that's going to help them to, not reoffend.
Gotcha. Cool. So I guess we can dive into kind of what makes assaults aggravated. I know that's a term that gets thrown around. If you wouldn't mind just kind of laying that out. And
Yeah,
how
so
that.
and Maryland doesn't do like the whole aggravated and all that, but really what we're focused on is like, is this a first degree, more serious, the felony, or is this the misdemeanor, right? And it's all those same factors we
Right.
spoke about, right? Was there a weapon involved? Was there strangulation involved or wasn't there?
So what kind of, is it just like a gun as a weapon, or what kind of stuff? You
Actually,
see some crazy
anything
stuff?
anything can be a weapon. I've seen an umbrella as a weapon. I've seen somebody was at the gas pump and like the rope
nozzle.
of the
Yeah.
people get creative.
But is it, to the court's eyes, it's just anything that like is used to forcefully hit
Essentially,
somebody?
there's a more calculated assessment of whether something's a weapon or not. But for the most part, yes. It's what is the item, how was it used, and did you hurt somebody with that item?
So speaking of weapons, how about words as weapons? So if I start insulting you, at what point does that become an assault?
It doesn't. So it really depends on what you're capable of. So if we're sitting right here and you're saying, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you, and you don't actually have a gun, how can I reasonably believe that you're going to shoot me right now, right? So there's an assessment that takes place. Now those types of things come into place when you're trying to see what the defenses are, right? So words just by themselves, that's not sufficient to assault somebody. You can call me every name in the book, and that does not necessarily give me justification to punch you in the mouth, right? Now, I might want to do that.
Right.
We might feel like that's appropriate. You yourself might be like, oh, she's going to hit me in the face, right? But that's not actually allowed based on the law. So it has to be that not only do you use your words, but that's coupled with something that makes me in fear that you're actually going to
It's more about the threat of what,
right. You gotta
the
have a
intent of
threat
what you're saying,
and
words,
something
right?
else,
And
right?
ability to do it.
Yeah, you just have a threat, and then you're leaning towards me. Now I might
Right.
think I gotta knock him out.
But watch out.
No, I know some, like, and it's a pretty specific incident, but some people, if they're going into a store or something and they act like there's something in their pocket, and people might assume that it's a weapon. How do those kind of get dealt in court? Is it just you kind of have to argue that no, he wasn't actually carrying a weapon, but there is a threat there?
Yeah,
There's a subjective intent.
that's a really, really good question. We see that sometimes where people are acting like they're going to pull some, or what they're actually pulling out is like I don't know, a marshmallow, right?
Yeah.
We actually see that a lot, and it all comes down to those factors and assessing. Does a reasonable person believe this? Did he actually believe this? Right? Did that person actually believe that he was about to be shot with some marshmallows? So there's an assessment that goes into play in that situation.
Cool.
So last question, what's one of the worst assault cases you've seen?
One of the worst? I had a client, I've seen some pretty bad one. I don't know, I guess, do you guys define worst by the injuries? Or do you define worst by, what do you define?
Let's change the question. Let's change it to
Okay.
what's the most memorable assault that you've
Memorable.
dealt with?
I think my old guy and his neighbor getting into it. We've got some brother-sister fights that were kind of
Really?
interesting. Yeah.
Did you see a lot of family, like familial stuff?
Oh yeah, we had
a family member.
had a trial in Howard County about a brother and sister where the sister came and hit him over the head with pickle jars. So.
Must be deadly.
Pickles,
crazy.
they can really mess up some people.
Apparently. All right, Angel. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today and talking about assault. Tyler, as always, I appreciate you hosting.
Yeah, of course.
Till
Thank
next
you
time.
guys. Yeah, so we'll finish up with the assaults here, and then I think we'll dive into more of Pennsylvania specific and assaults to kind of compare and contrast between the two. But Angel, thank you again,
Of course.
and stay tuned for next time. We'll see you for the next episode.